Up next, we have Danny Catton from PIA Residential. He's going to talk about the future of real estate and technology. Danny, are you there?
I am
All right.
here. Can you guys hear
Awesome.
me? All right, cool.
Yes, yes. I'm going to stop sharing and let you take over, okay?
Cool, thank you. Well, first of all, Michael and his team, thank you very much for keeping knowledge alive during these troubling times.
Yes.
And to everybody for showing up and listening to these wonderful speakers and panels that we have. So today I'm here as Danny Katan, managing partner of PIA, uh, but also I'm a futurologist. And the reality is, what's a futurologist? It's a cool sounding name. I sort of coined the term so I can be one, and anybody who wants to be one can join me. So the idea of this of this conversation is to talk about how real estate will be impacted by technology, because everybody talks about the economy and how people are going to pay or not pay rent and the Amazon effect, and the whole thing is the Amazon effect is one of the technological changes that are coming, but there's a lot of effects that are not being taken into consideration. So I want you to open up your mind. Whatever I say, it's not absolute, and just think about this, right? Airbnb, definitely, it's a fact, undeniable, change an asset class, which is hospitality. And Airbnb was not changed by technology. Airbnb was changed by the business model, right? Airbnb was an implementation of a business model with a technology that existed. So with that in mind, I urge you to open it up and let's start. So I assume that you guys can read a couple of things. So Chris Parinello, my analyst, who is helping me in here, is going to post up the links where you guys can actually click to do some things there. You can download this presentation later. Please, link with me in LinkedIn, and if you like what I say, once in a while, post some nice stuff in Instagram. So just follow me there. All right. So let's take it forward. Uh, why do I speak about this topic? Just bottom line, I was having a conversation with my partners about residential investment, and I said, you know, uh, it's good that we're in residential because a lot of those other assets will be affected by technology. And they looked at me like, you're BSing. I'm like, I think that there's technologies that will affect other assets. I'm an engineer with a background, and I have an MBA, so I have a very quant mind, but also a very creative mind. And I started telling them about what I think is coming on the pipeline. And I remember this is about 3 years ago, and I tell them autonomous vehicles will be here very soon, and they're like, not even in 15 years. So you all guys heard that the AV vehicles are already there, and that Waymo is already doing autonomous vehicles in Phoenix. So we're here. It's happening faster. But the reality is that we're in real estate. I am a real estate investor. In our company, what we do is we look at properties and we define risk, and we try to see how that risk affect our investments. We looked at most of the risks that we can believe are there, some of them that we don't see, but in our asset class, that technological risk is not as much as in other asset classes. So it's not self-serving. What I'm trying to tell you is that yes, residential is safer because it's heads in bed, and at the end, everybody needs a place to sleep. Okay. But if you think about it, there's very little that it's being done there apart from printing houses, 3D houses, which by the way exist. So by this time, I think you already read that slide. And again, I am not a researcher, an academic. I'm just an observer with a different point of reference. So the takeaways here, right? You need to evaluate present and future risk to calculate risk adjusted returns, right? But the other key aspect is that there are technologies that are changing exponentially, and those technologies will affect other technologies and will create more exponentiality. Meaning, if you have cheaper and faster computers, which we have every day, more slow, right? It will make it easier to have a cheaper and faster autonomous vehicle. So exponentiality and all these technologies help the same technologies, permeate and go faster. Okay. So the takeaway really is that we as human beings think linearly. Technology evolves exponentially, but the business model evolves logarithmically, meaning that it's multiplies by 10 all the time, right? So, oh crap, I forgot to share my screen. Sorry.
Yeah, you can take over, Danny. I just was putting it up. So I'm going to
Yeah,
stop sharing so you can.
please. Okay, so all right. Are we there yet? Can you guys see me? Can you see my
Yes, we
screen?
can. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. So think about that, right? I mean, the technology that made Uber happen was pretty much already there. I mean, there was some technology development in the back end, but suddenly you click a button and 3 years later it's everywhere around the world, right? It's logarithmically, and that is assuming that you don't have rules, regulations, and governments to deal with. So imagine what will happen if you allow technologically to be accepted very easily. Well, you don't have to imagine any longer, because in February we were in our offices, and if you were to tell everybody, hey, we're gonna have to work remotely, people are like, probably 5 years. COVID happens, and the next month everybody's Zooming, right? I mean, there are universities that had thought about going virtual, and their time frame was 5 years. Right? I was talking to somebody with in a UPenn the other day, and they were saying that internally they were discussing how can they go virtually, like what will it take? 3 to 5 years, right? It took them 2-3 weeks to realize that they can do it. So with the correct catalyst, I think that technology can accomplish a lot of things very quickly, right? How will that affect us? Well, that's for everybody to sort of start figuring out. Again, please be very open. But here's a graph that I think that has sort of the most significance, right? And that is what a New York taxi medallion used to be worth in 2004. As you can see, right? It starts at $200,000. Unfortunately, those lines are wrong. Okay, the black line should be in May 2011, so around here, right? And the red line should be in 2014, so around here. Okay, so think about this, right? 2011, Uber comes to the city, and you're holding licenses. And by the way, I'm not talking about the taxi driver. I'm talking about there are companies that hold $1 billion worth of licenses, and they were they were trading the public stock exchanges, right? And Uber comes to the city, and you're holding licenses. Somebody comes to you and says, hey, are you worried about Uber? And go, Uber schmoober, who cares? You need a yellow cab, so forth and so on, right? Still goes up, right? In 2014, which is when Lyft came to the city, when finally the New York Taxi Limo Commission said, okay, we're legal. Look what happens to the license. It's way down, right? Goes back to $200,000. Again, this is very smart people. I think UBS gave $1 billion worth of loans to a company that had, I don't know, a couple $1 billion worth of licenses. You're talking big money here. But even though the writing was on the wall, there's a technology is going to change, so forth and so on. This is what happened, right? Anything similar to that? Well, you can go Blockbuster, Toys R Us, Kodak, Sears. By the way, everybody thinks that Blockbusters did not see it. There's a very cool documentary, out of all places, in Prime about Netflix. And they talk about, the Blockbuster thing there. And Blockbuster was more ahead than we thought it was. So this is the other cool picture here. New York, 1900s. All horse-drawn carriages. 13 years later, and one car, by the way. 13 years later, all cars, one horse-drawn carriage. It's amazing. 13 years, the whole thing changed, right? And by the way, we're talking cars that did not work, did not brake, right? Did not have AC. I mean, obviously, they didn't smell like horse manure either, but that helped, right? And that used to blow a lot. I mean, they used to catch on fire. So the key points of this presentation, again, you can read the slides. How does technology affect your asset? right? If you have a warehouse that it's leased to somebody who distributes parts, and then suddenly a 3D printer shows up and can print those parts, are you going to need that much warehouse, right? It will happen sooner than you think. We already saw it, right? 13 years, all it takes to change, the New York landscape from horses to cars, right? Definitely be a new world, right? I mean, what will happen, right, with the sharing and gig economy? Now it's going to be augmented with the collaborative and distance economy. Think about that, right? Now we have offices all over the world that you can hire the best talent all over the world, maybe for half the money. But more than the economic part is the intellectual part. You're going to be able to share ideas without that much of uh, friction, right? So think about scientists that couldn't talk before, kind of like, the wall came down and now everybody's collaborating, which is amazing, right? And then do not forget that it's not only about technology, it's about business models, right? I mean, it's hard to fathom, but you could, run Airbnb using a fax, right? Uber now has a phone line because there's, some older people that don't know how to deal with apps, right? So one of those things that will change is business model. There's new business model being created every day, right? And a lot of those things we have not seen yet because we don't think it will happen. And think about this notion of you getting into somebody else's car because you push an app and then suddenly a guy that is driving you, right? And you would have said this thing 10 years ago. It's like, no way I'm gonna get in somebody else's cars that I don't know. Well, you did that every day with a taxi driver. It just happened that he or she was licensed. So what changed? And I think that what changed there wasn't really technology. It was the fact that suddenly the star ranking. It's like, oh, if you give people stars, okay, this is a nice guy, so forth and so on. That changed, right? Plus, the taxi industry really didn't care about the comfort and the convenience of its clients, right? So they brought up on themselves, right? So some of key points of this presentation: the residential asset class is a safer bet. I think so. I really encourage you guys to reach out to me, and if you have any comments about that statement, we'd love to talk about them. Here in open forum, or just call me and we'll do that. Or go to Futurology website, and we're gonna have some forums there, right? Geographical preferences will change. Now, if you're open, you can go anywhere, right? Why are you gonna have to pay all that rent in New York when you can come to sunny Florida where we have no taxes, right? Then the labor pool will change. That's a fact, right? Now you can hire anywhere in the world. But equally important, think about this amazing new thing that we will see very soon. You're gonna have self-driving cars that are shared, and the cost per mile there is probably less than public transportation. So people that did not have cars were limited to places that can work on, because they were close or not to their bus route. Now there's quote unquote a taxi that will take them anywhere. So that person that was limited to working, close by because that's where the bus take them, now they can go anywhere, right? Or you didn't want to spend 2 hours schlepping all the way downtown to work with, the company you really like. But now if a car is driving for you, why not? Right? And again, there's no absolute. When I say self-storage is going to disappear, it's not going to disappear. It's not an absolute. But in my mind, in 10 years from now, self-storage will be, very small asset class, and you will see why. So what are technologies to watch, right? So autonomous platforms. Everybody talks about the autonomous vehicles. No, think about autonomous platforms. So something that can drive whatever it is, either people or cargo or anything from point A to point B without, the driver. And that happens to be electrical. Okay, it's electrical. It doesn't necessarily to be electrical. Right now, there's autonomous platforms that are being connected to backhoes and excavators, and people trying to run construction sites autonomously, right? So that will create what it's called the transportation as a service economy, and it's an amazing economy. There's a link out there that you're going to see in the presentation that you can read more about it, right? Virtual reality, holographic telepresence. I kid you not, Google holographic telepresence by Cisco, and you will see what happens. Literally a hologram. It's like the Tupac hologram It's a conference in Cisco. One guys are in Hyderabad in India, and the other guys are in California, and they're literally talking to each other, right? So it's being there without being there, right? That's going to change. And the question is, do we really need to be there, or can we just communicate video? Think about that, right? I mean, Zoom, not Zoom, but video conferencing is a technology that existed since 20 years ago, right? And now it's sort of the same technology. It's probably crisper, better, but it's the same technology, right? 3D printing. They're already printing rockets. A company I think just raised about $100 million to 3D printed rockets. But equally important, the turbines for the 777, some of the elements are 3D printed. So they're 3D printing parts for cars that are being used in mass production right now. There's a lot of companies who are doing that. So 3D printing is going to be on-demand manufacturing, which might be you have an on-demand manufacturing facility in the corner of your house. Maybe where a Walgreens used to be. By the way, very interesting. Amazon finally is getting into the distributing of medicines. So batteries and solar energy, that will change. The exponentiality that is happening in batteries and solar energy will create a undistributed grid, but equally important, it will create other solutions that will help exponentialize technologies. For example, the autonomous vehicle, right, or the drones and stuff like that. So delivery on drones, right? It's artificial intelligence. So this is something that people are not really paying that much attention to it, on how this is going to affect real estate. But think about this: there are law offices that hire a bunch of analysts, and to basically look at papers and discovery and all that stuff. Right now, artificial intelligence is overperforming the regular analyst, obviously in speed and accuracy. So why do you need now 50 analysts when you can basically have a computer do it for yourself? And forget about the I need them here. You can have them somewhere else, right? So artificial intelligence is going to create it's going to reduce the friction, right? Of that we have in order to do business. Maybe I don't need an analyst next to me to help me with my presentation. So like Chris, I might have an Alexa type of thing that understands better than what I need. So artificial intelligence will catalyze and exponentialize other technologies. And then again, everybody's talking about 5G and internet speeds. We have Elon Musk, deploying satellites all over the world. A connected world will be a better world, which basically exponentializes the fact that people can work from anywhere. So there's some very cool presentations. There's this guy, Tony Seba. If anybody knows him, love to an introduction to him. I wrote a couple of times and he hasn't paid attention to me. But I quote him a lot because that's an amazing presentation, by the way. And that is a presentation that's about 3 years old. Morgan Stanley, had a great presentation on the transportation as a service economy. And there is also the other presentation about what happens when you disrupt the internal combustion engine. By the way, most car companies are going electric after 2030. And there are governments that are already saying that after 2030, you are not going to do internal combustion engine, right? So think about what happens with gas. Think about what happens if you are buying in Houston. Think about what happens, right, when you own a gas station, right? Or if you have a Walmart, a 7-Eleven that it's in a gas station. There's a lot of those things that will affect it. What will happen in the Middle East that now the oil price is not going to be worth as much? What are the geopolitical consequences of, autonomous electrical vehicles, right? So the key takeaways from Tony Seba is that mass adoption of autonomous technology will happen by 2030. He anticipates that 90% of all miles driven will be done by electrical share autonomous vehicles. I think that will happen sooner. But 2030, 90% of the miles. And by the way, miles driven is, instead of having 4 people use 4 cars to go to work, if it's shared now, you can actually pool and it will be easier, right? And people aren't going to do it because it's nice or it's cool. It's the savings. You're going to have a lot of savings on that. And when you are saving $500 a month because you don't own your car anymore, suddenly, the fact that, hey, you know what, there's not a driver there that's driving the car, and holy crap, I'm scared. uh it will change your mind. By the way, autonomous vehicles are safer per mile than regular driven vehicles. And then the new economy will be created in the same way that when they changed, from the phone to a cell phone, and now you have cell phone selling stores and cell phone repair stores and so forth and so on. Think about the new economy that will be created if you don't have to drive for 2 hours to your work. The brain power that will be used. So again, I'll leave that slide for you guys to read. But I mean, this thing's in the trillions, right? The price of oil will drop, right? The internal combustion engine, it's a very expensive proposition. It usually doesn't last that much, right? I own a Tesla. I bought the Tesla, because of, I truly think it's a great car, but equally important because I wanted to see how Tesla evolved and the autonomous vehicle sort of race. I haven't done anything to the car apart from just putting water to the windshield wiper. Uh, it's just amazing, right? And I mean, the car just drives as it was day one. So let's brainstorm a little bit, and I encourage everybody to participate if you guys want on how I think each asset class will be affected by different technologies, right? So Office, you have the Zoom effect, artificial intelligence on Office. We already talked about that. Uh, and the autonomous platforms, right? So if you don't have to drive and you can work from your car, well, you already made up about an hour. Even that's assuming you have to go to the office, right? Do you really have to go to the office uh, when the office can come to you? Think about it. That's also a concept, right? So shopping centers, right? We talked about the. So hold on, wait. Okay. So Q&A. Right? As technology makes labor and other assets exponentially cheaper, central banks have been lowering rates to maintain asset values. What is the final conclusion to this behavior? Let me think about that. All right. So shopping centers, AI. So think about that. Now I have an AI that basically is going to understand pretty much what I want. And by the way, that happens when you see it with with Siri and with Alexa, right? They anticipate what you think because they already heard the conversation, right? But if you have autonomous platform, can the store come to you? Is it easier for the store to come to you? Is it easier for stores and shopping centers to just have sort of very minimal inventory, and when you buy whatever you need to buy, it gets put in an autonomous car or a delivery vehicle, gets dropped in the door of your house before you even get there, right? 3D printing. Do you need that much inventory? You can print it on site, right? So those things will change the way we see shopping or the retail experience. And everybody and their mother that is trying to buy a retail center says, oh, my shopping center is going to have a nail salon and a restaurant, and they're going to have a barber shop, and it will be all experiential. There's going to be so many nail salons and so many barber shops, and so many restaurants that at the end there's not space for everybody, right? Yes, there has to be an experiential amount of engagement in each shopping center. I'm not saying that the desire of people to go out and shop, certainly the Zoom economy and being locked up, everybody realized we have to go out with social human beings, but I don't think it's going to be in the same frequency. I'm not saying tomorrow or 5 days from now or 5 years from now. I think that it will change. So self-storage, this is one of my favorite. So think about self-storage. You have to take your crap, you put it into a car, you drive the car. That's assuming that you don't need a truck. You drive the car to the self-storage, you take it outside of the car, you sort of put it up, then you come back and you come back home. Think about all the amount of work and time wasted. What if that pod comes to you? Now we have pods that they come to you, they're very expensive. You have to have the driveway, they drop it in there, right? Now, if a pod comes to you in the sort of form of a very small car, with like a sort of minivan type, that's already under prototyping. You put everything in that car and it goes away. People ask me, yeah, where is it going to be stored? Well, you're going to have a lot of empty parking lots from shopping centers of cars that are not being used anymore, right? And then when you need it, you push a button and it just comes to you, right? And the reality will probably come to you faster than you can go your shopping to your self storage, and that's assuming that you need to store stuff, because I guess we still have books and the old vinyl records and stuff like that. But the new kids, everything's virtual. They don't have photo albums, right? So let's think about that a little bit, right? And then it can be 3D printed. I can make it right now. I don't have to store it anymore. So things like that. Artificial intelligence might be able to tell you that, hey, you don't need to have skis because your neighbors have skis, and maybe you can share the ski that you need with the water ski that you have. So things like that already exist. Manufacturing, 3D printing, that's an obvious one, right? The AI, I am an industrial engineer, so I can tell you that a lot of the inefficiencies that happen in factories, both in space and speed, have to do with the fact that it's very hard to synchronize everybody, right? So if robots are synchronized with humans using artificial intelligence, I think that factories will have a better productivity and will require a lesser footprint. When I was doing my industrial engineering career, and that was 85 to 90, the Japanese came with just in time, and it's there's studies there that says that just in time save about 20% of the factory floor. So I think that factories of the future should be smaller, with a less footprint on it, and equal important, more productive, right? Distribution centers, well, if you have AI that will deal with the friction that it's in a distribution center, because inventory sometimes is, you have to solve for the unknowns. How long does it take the inventory to get here? How long does it take to distribute it? So you have to have sort of safety inventory. But if artificial intelligence, walks through all the sales forecast and does it better, and you can synchronize better the players in a warehouse, you probably need less warehouse space. Autonomous platforms, suddenly you might not need to send a big truck to be split into little trucks and then distribute it, but you can send small trucks from the factory all the way to the retail center, because now the cost per mile is so low or it's irrelevant, right? And then again, 3D printer, you can print things in the retail side, and you don't have a distribution. You don't need a warehouse distribution. To think about a carts part warehouse. Now, if I'm a dealership and I can print the parts in house, I don't need that warehouse, so it works. Gas stations, I think those are gone. I mean, in 10 years from now, 15 years from now, those are gone. I mean, and the reality is what will happen to the 7-Elevens that are in gas stations, right? Because the business is not the gas. The business are the 7-Eleven. Yes, there will be gas stations that will cater to the old cars. I have a Mustang 66. God knows that I love that car, and that, I will not get rid of it. And it will need gas, right? So there will be a gas station for that. But I don't think there will be a gas station for the regular used vehicles. At some point, it will become very expensive to you to have a car that doesn't drive itself, because the insurance companies aren't going to allow you to do that, right? It will be like a risky thing. It will be like, go jump from a parachute rather than drive a car. And then, business hotels, holographic teleconferencing, AI also will not require people to interact that much. And, the autonomous platforms. I mean, when there's a conference in Orlando, I fly the night before, I sleep there. I'm sorry, I drive the night before, I sleep there, and then I'm at the conference. But if a car drives me early in the morning and I can sleep in the car, I might not have to go to a hotel. Again, I would probably go to a bar of the hotel, which is a different story. Triple net standalone, 3D printing, autonomous platform, the Amazon effect. I think that Walgreens, once you can literally push a button and get things delivered to your house, you might not have to go to Walgreens, which basically means that you don't have to buy a bunch of chocolates and all the goodies that you go and buy when you go pick up your medicine. Will that affect those triple nets? I think a bit, probably more than I think, but that's also. And then the residential part, right? If you're doing holographic teleconferencing or Zoom, you have to be somewhere, so that I think it's a positive effect. Autonomous platforms means that you don't have to live next to your office, which basically, you can go to suburbia, which you can see it happening right now. And 3D printing, and it's starting to work. There's companies that are starting to 3D print house to make it cheaper, because what we really need is affordability. And that's something that technology is working hard at it. but I don't think it will solve it that easily. I think it has to do more with, the zoning laws, and there's some cities that will not allow zoning to be high density, and that really goes against the affordability of the residences. So just a pitch for my company. We basically invest in multifamily real estate. We look to deliver to our investors net of fees IRRs of 8%. I'm sorry, IRRs of 15% and cash on cash of 8%. Every day harder, much harder. But it's working class, plain vanilla underwriting, risk adjusted returns. So if anybody wants to talk more offline about this, feel free to call me.
Thank you, Danny. This was a great presentation. We really appreciate you sharing all this cool information with everyone.